Now, talking about the economy and how it's going to affect you over the next 6 months or so, and joining us to talk about that today is Sri Sundaram, a professor at GVSU of Finance. Sri, what are you thinking here? Let's talk kind of general overview of the economy. Are we on the way out of this recession, or are we going to see another bump like some people have feared?
Yeah. Brett, I think we're definitely out of the woods. I see every data that is looking at us is that there's a stability in the unemployment. We are at 10%, and I think we're going to start to see that the unemployment start to decrease, and I think that's going to continue to happen. You look at the producers, index, that clearly indicates that the manufacturing activity is starting to increase. So everything I look at the economy and everything what we hear is that yes, there are some small bumps, but I think we're going to look at the second half is going to be about a 3% growth rate in GDP.
And you're talking national growth rate, though.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've been watching the Dow here. It's been going up and down. It's been above 10,000, and then it was below 10,000 this week for the first time in a while. So what's the deal there? Why are we seeing so much volatility there?
Right. Now, we're talking about the stock market, and the stock market is responding to what's happening in Europe, and especially the Greece. And again, the big fear is that, how much we're gun-shy from what happened in 2008. Right now, what the European, the countries have talked about, and the European Union has guaranteed is that we're going to make everything necessary to make sure that debt crisis doesn't become a big issue for us. And so what I'm thinking is that, yes, we're going to retreat, but given what we have learned in 2008, every country is looking forward to making sure that we don't have an excessive problem with the Greek debt crisis, and that is not going to spread.
I'm going to get the debt here in a second, but I wanted to talk about West Michigan. What about us? I mean, when you're talking about growth rate of 3%, that's a national number. When you're talking about 10%, that's a national unemployment rate. That's not Michigan.
Yes.
Michigan's much higher than that.
Right. And you're right. Clearly we are still influenced heavily by the auto industry, and we are clearly starting to see as the auto sales are picking up, and the numbers for whether it is Ford, whether it is Chrysler, GM, and how they are picking up. We're starting to see these suppliers of tier 1, tier 2, they're starting to pick up, but it is a long way. Where we have dropped off as far as employment is concerned, it is a long way for us. Well, clearly we're starting to see things pick up, especially in the West Michigan side. I think we're definitely starting to see things pick up. Again, looking at the manufacturers index, we're starting to see right around here the index is starting to pick up. Real estate is stabilized, so everything is showing that yes, we're still behind the national average, but we are starting to stabilize here.
So we're still sick, but we're in the recovery room now instead of intensive care.
Absolutely correct.
Let's talk about this oil spill that's really dominating the headlines all across the nation right now. The Gulf is full of oil at this point. So far, gas prices haven't really reflected that or the fears that may be coming along with it. What does that oil spill mean for Western Michigan?
I think as far as the summer is going to be concerned, we're still starting to see that the oil prices are going to go up. There is no question about it with the demand. But how much is the BP oil spill is going to influence it? I think that's tough to sell. Tough to say at this point in time. I don't think the experts are predicting that it's not going to have a huge impact. At the end of the day, still we're talking about from the overall production standpoint, it is still a very small part of it. So I don't expect that to have a huge impact in West Michigan or throughout the industry, simply because I think the demand overall is going to increase in summer, and that's going to spike up the oil. Right now it's about a little bit $73 a barrel.
Yesterday, Ben Bernanke was testifying before Congress, and he was saying that the debt crisis is the biggest crisis basically facing the United States right now, that Congress has to get a handle on spending. Is that your belief too?
Yes. I think our deficit clearly, and if you look at it again, we are still considerably high, like some of the European nations, as far as how much our debt is as a percent of GDP. Well, what is positive for us in the U.S. is that we are growing. Our economy is large enough. We can support this compared to some of the smaller countries in Europe. So yes, it is a huge concern. We cannot continue to throw stimulus money out there, or we continue to spend our way through. So there is no question. I think Bernanke is absolutely correct. We need to be very careful about how much the debt is going to continue to grow.
Yeah, we're basically the rich neighbor on the block. Yes. But the thing is that we just can't keep throwing money out in our swimming pool.
Right. The fundamentals are good. I think we're definitely going to be looking good for the second half, so we can count on 3% growth rate.
Great. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. I really appreciate your time, Sri.
It's a pleasure.
Sri Sundaram with GVSU. Let's send it back to you, Emily.